Good morning, good morning. It's a great day as we gather to celebrate. We do want to welcome all our guests and visitors who are with us as well, and hope you are empowered by the service today as we celebrate one with another. If you've not done so, I invite you to take the white booklets on the inside, pass those around so we can see who our brothers and sisters are who have gathered for worship on this day. There's also a prayer request card in the opening folder. If you have a prayer request, please write legibly and then put that in the offering plate, and I'd be glad to share that as part of our service. Before we begin with the other announcements, I just want to, it's been kind of a difficult week with a lot of illness and struggles going on with several of our members. So I wanted us to just, first of all, do two things. If you all got one of these green things when you came in, these announcement sheets, just turn to page 2, and on the top of that, you'll notice a listing of all of our members who are in either care facilities or homebound. And we just want you to be intentional today in particular, praying for these folks and just doing a special blessing. We'll be naming them later in the service. But this week we've also been, it's been a rather hectic pastoral week. Penny Ross has been put into hospice care, one of our members. Burton Hogue has as well. Burton is Sonia's husband, Diane Barker's grandfather. He was put into hospice this week as well. Emma Jean Beloy has been put into hospice care. And Richard Peters, for those Santa Claus, Richard was doing better but has had a pretty severe relapse. So he's starting his journey over again in recovery. We do also want to know that Bev Morton, who we've been praying for, did break her leg. They were able to repair that with a new hip and repairing the leg. She is recovering well. I saw her yesterday. They're getting ready to get her up and have her walking. Surgery is Friday, and so they're making her walk yesterday, so they get them right up. But she's doing better. We do also want to lift up Luann Meyer, who is in the hospital, had surgery. She'll be coming home either today or tomorrow. And then you notice Pastor Beth isn't here. She's not doing well. Don't know if it's flu or what, or she's just sick of you guys. I don't know what it is, but no, she's sick at home and was unable to make it today. So you are stuck with me all the way through. But the other joy, our own Cindy Strauss over there decided to slip on the ice a little bit and break her ankle, but she's with us and thankful for that. And Greg is waiting on you hand and foot, right? All right, you're the man, Greg, so give thanks for that. So I just want you to be mindful of all that's going on in our community of faith, and we'll be lifting up those prayers a little bit later on. Okay, Bob, we're ready. Thank you. So on Tuesday evening, Race Forward. Do you want to say anything about that real quick, Ruth, or just be there? Be there. It's a great book. If you've not been able to be part of those discussions, please get that book. It's just a very powerful writing, and you can be part of that conversation. Thank you. It's also Ash Wednesday coming up this week. I really can't believe that we're that close to Christmas. It just seems like it was yesterday. Ash Wednesday is this coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And we would like to invite you all to come to that very special prayerful service. Just a reminder, you'll be getting a blast from us on the email as well. But please put that on your calendar and join us for a very special service. Every Wednesday after Ash Wednesday, there will be a Taizé service as well. John Miller will be leading those at 5:30 every Wednesday after that one. Also, you want to talk about this? Come on up, Ruth, because you know what you're going to be doing around this. Thank you for bringing Selma.
Yeah, we want to recognize Black History Month here at Peace, and Selma is a very powerful movie about voting rights in Selma, Alabama, in the march, and there are still people living that marched on Selma. And also, John Edmonds has agreed to lead a discussion afterwards, and so I hope you all can stay over until at 1:30 next Sunday. There is a display out on the table right by the nursery with highlights, and there's this. We have the videotapes that we've been looking at in Race Forward, which are powerful commentaries on white fragility and white privilege, things we need to address and look at. And you can get those through your phone app now, because Beth put them on the phone app, so that's really cool. And the barcode is out there. You can just zip right into it. So, and also that book, White Rage, it's Black history that we never learned in school. and it's a very different viewpoint than what we were given in our white textbooks.
And thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership, Ruth, with that ministry. We also want to let you know about the Peace Women's Retreat. I know nothing about women, but I know the retreat's April 13th through the 15th. I really don't know anything about it. Lori, what do they have to do to sign up? Perfect. I know in the past they've been great retreats, so we hope you'll all be signing up for that and joining the gang. So that'd be great. No men allowed, by the way. Also, we also talked about the annual meeting about bringing in this new position that we're really excited about. We keep growing in that support for that. Our total goal was raising an additional $25,000 so we could bring on this person to really help with ministries from children all the way through adults and finding ways of making those interact and just really building on our strong faith formation program. We're gaining ground. We're not there yet. April 1st is coming up, though. So if you're at all wanting to contribute to that, to make that a reality, please do that as soon as you can. We greatly appreciate it, either a pledge or a gift to support that ministry. We also want to just be mindful that during the service, we're going to have Sue and Dean from Samaritan Bethany talk to us a little bit later on in the service. They gave a wonderful presentation between services about the history. You don't have to do the whole thing. You just do some of the thing again, whatever you want to do. So we're so thankful. Can you guys just stand up for me real quick and give thanks for their leadership? So you'll hear more from them later. Other items that we need to cover as we gather together on this day. Today, I just want to share with you is Transfiguration Sunday. It's kind of a weird Sunday that we do every year, but you're going to hear more about it a little bit later on in the service about what this really all means. It's a special day when we really get the meaning and power behind what God's purpose through God's light is all about. So we want to invite you to that, being transformed, transfigured by the Spirit of God. As we come together, we just invite you to share with us on this journey. And our opening scripture is from the Gospel according to Mark. It's from chapter 9, and this will set up the stage for our Transfiguration Sunday and what it's all about. It says, 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. And suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. And they were coming down the mountain. He ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man has risen from the dead. That's going to be our framework for us today as we gather together in God's Spirit. Will you join me in a moment of prayer? God, for all the blessings that you give to us and the opportunities we have just to be in your presence, to be empowered by your light, to be transformed and transfigured with you, we just give great thanks. So bless us all as we gather on this day, as we celebrate your amazing presence. Be with us and let that light shine boldly in our hearts, but most importantly, throughout the world around us. We pray all this as we gather together in one voice, praying together the prayer that Jesus first taught, our Creator. If you can read, what does it say up on the screen?
Pastor Beth.
Right. Do I look like Pastor Beth?
No.
No? Okay. Well, I'm taking her place today because Pastor Beth is sick. So I have a favor for you, and maybe some of our adults can help make this happen. That's what we're going to do. We're going to, while you're sitting in the pews and while you're the adults around you are all paying attention to my sermon, right? I want you guys to make a get well card for Pastor Beth. Can you do that for me? Right? Good to go? Okay. So the story that I read a little bit earlier, I want to tell you just a little bit more about this story that I read from the Bible. It's really a cool story because it reminds me of Star Trek, because Jesus got all glowy. They kind of beamed up and around. So it always reminds me of, you know what Star Trek is? Maybe that's...
No.
You guys know what it is. They don't. So
It's like a drink.
No, it's not a drink, but it's close. So
Oh, that's
it could be.
Star
That
Rock.
Star Rock. There you go. Now remember why I don't do these anymore. So we do give thanks for the way that that story comes together, because here you had three of Jesus' closest friends, and they got together, but they didn't know what was going on. And there were these old guys, Elijah, that came around, and Peter, and Moses, and they were there with Jesus. But all of a sudden, they were gone, and Jesus was left by himself. But God spoke to him and said, with all this going on, all this chaos going around, I want you to just listen to him. Jesus is my beloved, the one who I've called to be with you. So just listen to him. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of people giving me a lot of advice on how I should do my job. Do you hear that at home a lot, where people are always telling you what to do? Mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or
Yes.
teachers? Is everybody always telling you what to do?
And it's
Right?
sometimes annoying.
Sometimes it's annoying. Yes, it is. So what I want you to do is think about all those people are telling you what to do, and sometimes it's hard to really understand what you're supposed to do.
But
So I'm
we
gonna,
tell people what to do too.
we tell people what to do too. That is correct. You could be a preacher. No? Okay. So what I want us to do, though, I'm going to have the congregation help us a little bit, because I want you all out there to begin thinking for a minute about what you would tell all these wonderful young kids up here that they need to do best for themselves in life. So you got like 2 seconds here to think it out. So on the count of 3, all these people and back here, they're all going to start yelling out advice to you. Okay? So I want you guys to listen to what they have to say, and you got to count. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. On 3, they're just going to start yelling out all the great advice they have. Ready? 1. Not yet. I'm not at 3. So we're going to 3. Got to do 1, 2, 3 together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. I can't hear you. I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. Okay.
Do the dishes.
Okay. So did you guys? So did you guys hear any advice from all of these people around us?
I did.
What did you hear?
I heard someone saying like, make sure your mom cooks dinner.
Make sure your mom cooks dinner. That's what you think. So what? But could you understand everything that was going on out there?
Couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, it gets kind of confusing when everybody's trying to tell you what to do, and it gets pretty crazy. So what I want you to do is think about what God told us to do. Is in the midst of all the chaos of everybody telling you what to do, to think about one thing, what God calls you to do, and through Jesus to hear with those beautiful words about loving one another. As that last song said, there's nothing more that we need to do to take care of one another. That's the voice that Jesus gives us. And you're going to hear a lot of other voices out there, a lot of people telling you what you should and shouldn't do. And that's important to listen to teachers and parents and grandparents. I saved that one for you. But it's most importantly, listen to how God is calling you to love one another. Deal? Okay, let's have a quick prayer together. Dear God,
Dear God,
thank you for being with us,
thank you for being with us.
and thank you for giving us great advice. Amen. All right. Thanks for being up
You know
here.
what? Most of the kids didn't even
They didn't say that? Well,
giving people advice.
okay, we'll work on that, okay? So that's your homework. Here, 16 years ago, one of the most exciting things I saw that we do outside the church is this very ministry. And through the years, I've got to know these two pretty well, and they've known me real well. We've had some executive meeting times together over at Glenner's, and we've created more problems than we solved, but it's been good. It's all my friends, Sue Knutson and Dean Stendham. So welcome to Peace.
Thank you. Thank you. Put this on. I'm Sue. This is Dean, like you couldn't tell. But in between services, I got to share kind of the history of Samaritan Bethany. And really, Peace Church in 1922, the Men's Fellowship, came up with the idea that they needed a convalescent hotel to care for people who were recuperating at Mayo Clinic and couldn't travel home. And so back then, they had the visionary site to build a facility next to your church on 7th and Broadway, where the Holiday gas station currently is, but to build a place for people to recover. And that ministry has continued to grow. I was at a session last week at Leading Age Minnesota and had the opportunity to listen to a gentleman who was sharing about these two organizations. One is a ELCA and one is an Evangelical Free Church. So 2 Lutheran congregations that today, in 2018, were joining together, but they were having difficulty based on their different values in their churches. And I think back to 1970 when you guys joined with 6 Lutheran churches and had the ability to see through the differences in your faith and take care of people in the Rochester community and build Samaritan Bethany. So even though Ruth is talking about Selma and things that are happening back then and the changes and things that have happened going forward, Peace Church has always been involved in making sure that the seniors and elders in the Rochester community were cared for at Samaritan Bethany. And so I know I'll be around afterwards to talk about anything you want to at lunch or whatever, but please ask questions. And if you don't have the opportunity, you're always welcome to come visit. We are always looking to share what happens at Samaritan Bethany. So Dean's going to share a little bit about another part of Samaritan Bethany, our foundation.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, I'm Dean Stenium, and I'm the Foundation and Development Leader. That means I'm the fundraiser. Okay. I have the distinct pleasure of working with Samaritan Bethany over the last 3 years. And people say, well, that's a dirty word, fundraising. It's kind of sleazy, it's kind of, but no, what comes down to is that I try to match up people's values with our mission. And if there's an intersection between your values and our mission, then we have something to talk about. And we can develop the relationships and move forward from there to see if there's something that you can help us achieve. Fundraising at Samaritan Bethany takes many different forms. Some of it's individual, people's writing checks, credit cards, what have you. Others are events. There's going to be a pancake breakfast here on April 18th. Excuse me, I'm thinking June 28th, which is our golf tournament at June 18th. That's all for me now. But we do have events and activities. The fundraising goes towards our residents, whether it's activities, equipment, special training for our staffs, whatever it might be. All our fundraising goes back to benefit the residents. This last year, we were fortunate to raise over $195,000 to put towards the care and services for our seniors. And that was a big year for us, and we hope to do even better next year. So thank you for all the support that you have given us over the years. As Pastor Paul said, we are 96 years young.
That's right.
And we're coming up onto that magical 100. And I think you can look forward to a special fundraising appeal at that point.
That'd be great. So on the golf tournament, who's won it the most times?
That would be Peace United Church of Christ.
That's what I
yeah.
wanted to hear. So,
Yeah. And who won the last 2 years?
and who didn't play the last 2 years?
Oh, you. Yeah.
Anyhow, so it's so great to have you all here and sharing our ministry together. Let's give thanks once again for that. We're going to be blessed, so many ways, over and over. We just have all these little blessings and pockets of ministry. We have the opportunity now to hearing this blessing of a song. And so, Teresa, thank you ahead of time for sharing that. Broken Ladders.
To be king, build my tower up to the sky. So why do I try? You never asked me to be rich by the things that gold can buy. So why do I try? All you ever wanted was my heart, my simple heart. To you, that's all that really matters. be complete. By myself, I know I need. So why do I try? Oh, you never asked me to stand alone, face the struggles on my own. So why do I try when all you ever wanted was my heart, my simple heart? To you, that's all that really matters. Why do I feel I have to reach, believe I have to rise, when you never said I had to climb these broken ladders? 'Cause all they do is take my eyes off of you, make me forget the truth. All you ever wanted was my heart, my simple heart. To you, that's all that really matters. Why do I feel I have to reach, believe I have to rise, when you never said I had to climb? Oh, you never said I had to climb these broken ladders. Oh, these broken ladders.
Whew, I've never heard that song before. I'm not sure where you found that, but what an awesome piece that is for us as we gather today. Well, this is a kind of a strange Sunday. We do it every year, but it's often that oft-forgotten Sunday called Transfiguration Sunday. It's kind of a strange one. It sets us up for the Lenten season that begins with Ash Wednesday this coming Wednesday. So I want to think about this a little bit today with us. And this mythical story of Jesus' transfiguration reminds me of songs about mountains, like Climb Every Mountain, right? Who wants to sing that for me? Tom? I didn't think so. Okay. So, yeah. Or like the Osborne Brothers, Rocky Top, Tennessee, and Alabama's Play Me Some Mountain Music. I know these guys can do all that, but not now. And then there's John Denver, Take Me Home, Country Roads. And especially when you think about the people who were witnessing what was happening high upon the mountain, a Rocky Mountain high. They must have been experiencing something kind of different because of what took place really didn't make sense. But in reality, when I think about Jesus' transfiguration, I think about old-fashioned love songs. The kind of songs that were playing on the radio the first time that you met. And when you hear them, you're instantly taken back to the days when you first fell in love. For Dell and me, it was Unchained Melody. Now, one of the newer love songs is called Truly, Madly, Deeply by a group called Savage Garden. And the words of the chorus are particularly appropriate for transfiguration. It says, I want to stand with you on a mountain. I want to bathe with you in the sea. And I can't go any further because that would be very embarrassing. But I want to talk to you about love songs, and more particularly about standing up on a mountain. Now, how many of you have been to a mountaintop before? Most of you? Yeah, most of us have had a chance to do that. I've been to the mountaintop. It's so beautiful up there on the mountain. You can see up there forever. You can breathe in deeply and feel the very Spirit of God breathing in you. It all makes sense up there on the mountaintop. It's so beautiful that you just never want to leave. There's nothing quite being on top of the world, on top of the mountain. Bob, can you advance that for me? So this past 2 summers ago, we had a chance to go to Mount Evans in Colorado, and these beautiful pictures that we were able to take are spectacular. If you can move for us, this scene just really speaks to me about being high up on the mountain, and God is all around us in the beauty of it. And then there's always Adele, of course, who stands on top of the mountain doing her thing. So, if you see her, ask her to pose for you. It's pretty amazing. So I remember one of the first mountaintop experience. You can change that because nobody wants to see that anymore. I remember some of my first mountaintop experiences that I had in church. You see, I grew up in the church as a preacher's kid. And when I went to church, I had to be there. I had no choice. Our house was on the parking lot of the church. And so when the church bell rang, I knew that if I was home, I better get my backside there as quickly as I could, because we sat down in the third row on the left side every Sunday. And if I wasn't there, believe me, I'd pay for it after church. So I went to church because of familiarity and an obligatory presence. And during that time, I really didn't understand God. I really didn't care about God. I had no idea why I was there, other than my parents said, you got to be there. Right? You know what I'm talking about. I took God for granted. I didn't really care about any sort of faith. And Jesus was just kind of this cool guy that came out of the grave once a year. But you see, through all those experiences, it did take me a while to get on top of the mountain. But I can remember exactly what it felt like when I did. I was sitting on one of the highest hills with my 2 best friends from church camp one summer. I somehow felt the power of God pour over me like never before. I can't explain it to you. I don't know why it happened at that time, other than we were alone all together. You see, that moment, though, I could recall it so vividly. And for some of you who have been to church camps or other type of retreats, you know what I'm talking about. Those moments that come to you in those very sacred and special ways. That started the journey to many other mountaintop experiences for me, many trips, and those trips up to the mountain, the way I felt up there in the clouds, well, it's those mountaintop experiences that kept me coming back to church. It wasn't mom or dad anymore, but it was about the power of God that pushed me to becoming more knowledgeable about what God had for me. And well, eventually, it allowed me and let me become a pastor. And through God's calling, miracles happen. You see, it's the Jesus that I met up there on that mountaintop moment all those years ago that made me stay with God and with the church. And the Jesus that I met all those years ago was simply amazing. I fell in love with Jesus' message and his integrity and the message about loving all the people. It took me to great heights in my understanding of who God really was. Not what the church had tried to teach all those years, but the special relationship. Now, my home church, the church that I attended back then in Iowa was a lot like this place. The congregation is about the same size as this, and they love to sing just like you do. And this congregation, though, could really, really sing. All of our worship trips to the mountain began with a song. And singing those songs together lifted us all up to the mountain and opened us to find new ways in our faith to understand who Jesus was and what his message was all about. And we walked with him and we talked with him. And we told us that we were his own, and the joy that we shared, we tarried there, none other has ever known. What the congregation sang, they could take me to places that I could never dream about. I knew that there in the midst of all that singing, that God was holy, holy, holy. And that I could be whom God created me to be, just as I am, without one plea. And know that I was forgiven by God's amazing grace, who could save and call a wretch like me. I didn't know it then because I was the fresh flush of my love affair with God and Jesus, but those old songs molded me and they shaped me in my faith. And I don't remember the words to probably any of my dad's sermons, but I can remember so many of the words of those old hymns that we sang. And today I must confess that as a preacher, it saddens me to say, but it's most certainly true, that you all don't go home from church humming my sermon. No matter how eloquent I can preach or not preach, you will always go home not humming my sermon, but this beautiful music that you hear. Those mountaintop experiences that I remember from my teenage early days in the church, each and every single one of those mountaintop experiences were punctuated by hymns and songs. And those old hymns in particular molded and shaped me in my faith. Those old hymns taught me the faith of the generations that went before me. They nurtured my development in my faith, and in so many powerful ways, they came to define who I am today in my faith journey. But there's one hymn in particular that is synonymous with my understanding of the faith back in those days. Most people didn't need a hymnal to look at the words. It was in their bones, and they sang it even in defiance of my dad, the pastor, who even back then insisted that there was something not quite right about the theology of this particular hymn. Now, I know that some of you did not grow up in a mainline church, or perhaps you won't know this particularly moldy oldie, but I know that there are probably more than a few of you here who could probably still sing it from memory. I want you to have the words of this old hymn in your heads as we try to travel up the mountaintop that we heard about, because this hymn, like no other, exemplifies what I believed back in the day. This hymn molded and shaped my love affair with Jesus. And like any love song, just the sound of the opening bars could take me back to the person I was that day. When I first began hanging out on top of the mountains, the song that rang through my ears, on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. Do you know that? Let's hear it. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. Now you know this part. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday. It comes back to you. And the power of those words. And so there you have it. In one little snapshot of my teenage theology, an old faded picture of Jesus that I fell in love with, a simpler, beautiful time to be sure. A time when God was up in heaven and all was right with the world. It was an easy, simple, fluffy little faith. But all the trips down memory lane, all the nostalgia of the world can't get me back to those mountaintops that I used to love to hang out upon. I just can't go back to that simplicity anymore. Because I know that there is no heaven up in the sky. I've been up there. I've flown above the clouds. I know there's no old bearded man up there in the sky just waiting for me to say the right prayer so that he can grant my wishes like a genie in the bottle. On a good day, I know that I am beautifully and wonderfully made and not some loathsome sinner. I've seen more than enough of life to know that I don't want to worship any kind of a God who demands a blood sacrifice. I've been around and seen enough of this old world to know that there's ever going to be any peace on earth, then I've got to roll up my sleeves and do the hard work of establishing justice in this world of ours. I've learned and lived enough to know that if we really are going to honestly and fully and equally and faithfully love one another, I have to acknowledge my own racism and my own privilege and prayerfully do the uncomfortable work to embrace and empower all of God's people. I've dabbled just long enough in all the sciences to know that this world of ours is amazing. And the place where I fell in love with Jesus, well, it's just not there anymore. The physicists and the anthropologists and the historians and even the theologians have torn all those familiar places away where I used to walk hand in hand with God. And that's a good thing. I know that Jesus' trip to the top of the mountain was a myth. I know that Jesus his first followers told the story of Jesus' transfiguration, the way they told it so that the people who never ever met their beloved Jesus would know exactly who Jesus was. You see, the transfiguration of Jesus includes all the elements of a perfect love story. Jesus and his best buddies have to travel up to the top of a mountain. Just like every other hero of the day, they traveled up to a top of a mountain, and when they got there, they had such a great time. They were partying and experiencing the Rocky Mountain High, I'm sure. The more they walked and they talked together, and the more they knew that there was something incredible special about this man named Jesus. Because he's the one that they've been waiting for all their lives. He was the one who could lead them. And just like the leaders of old, just like Moses and Elijah before him, Jesus had what it takes to move them out of the hell that they were living in into something new and special. Why, it was as if the very Spirit of God shone through Jesus, just like every sacred story that they've heard before. When someone was really in touch with the divine, why they positively glowed. So if you want to know what God looks like in the flesh, well, look no further than Jesus. It was amazing, so amazing that they didn't want to tell anybody about it. They'd rather contain Jesus in a tent and keep it all there. Now, earlier this week, I decided to look up the definition of transfiguration. After all, I'm a pastor for a lot of years. I know what it means, but I had to look it up anyhow. But they said that transfiguration is where something or someone experiences a metamorphosis. It went on to say that metamorphosis is what happens when someone or something changes from an immature form to an adult form. Changing from an immature form to an adult form. Sounds like a trip back down to earth for me. And what a love affair could survive if lovers are not prepared for their love to change from that, you know what that gooey feeling is when you first meet, into something more special. From immaturity to maturity. What theology can survive if those who cling to it are not prepared to let go so that theology can grow into an adult form? So believers and lovers and theologians and scientists and worship and followers and humans, we cannot live and move and have our being unless we're prepared to grow from immaturity to maturity. So the story of transfiguration is a story of Jesus' followers trying to figure out exactly who and what Jesus is. And if we want to know who and what Jesus is, we have to be prepared to be transfigured ourselves. We too must be prepared to have our faith changed from an immature form of a Jesus loves me into a difficult, progressive, prophetic voice for the world around us. And like all true myths, the myth of the transfiguration is not something that's over and done with the telling the story. We have to tell that over and over and over again, because the more we learn about life, the more we learn about God, the more we learn about creation and the cosmos and what it means to be human, the more we can learn about the one who was and is and will ever be the source of all that is what we're all about. And if we really want to know, to experience the Holy One we call God, we can begin by listening to Jesus' message and looking to Jesus, because we can see the glory of God made flesh. Irenaeus once said back in the 3rd century, God became human so that humans could become God. You see, in Jesus we can see divinity so that we too can become divine ourselves. For it's in Jesus that we can see what it means to be more fully human, to be more fully in the image of the divine. So we live in these really weird and exciting times where our faith needs to be more mature than ever to understand and to be a voice in the world for what's going on around us. Our knowledge is exploding, and we're learning so much about creation and the cosmos and what it means to be human, and the knowledge about informing our faith. We are beginning to redefine what it means to be a people of faith, what it means to be a church, and what it means to be fully human, and what are we seeing divinity in a whole new light. So historians and scientists and theologians, more than our ancestors ever knew about life and the teaching of Jesus, so much that the ways in which we're able to experience Christ are opening up, and we're experiencing faith in ways that equip us to be Christ to one another in ways that promise all sorts of new mountaintops. So I think we need all these love songs to be sung, to tell about Jesus. New traveling songs for those mountain trails, new hymns to inspire courage in all of us for the trip back down to earth to do the work that needs to take place. And these new anthems to inspire the work of being love in the world. And yes, from time to time, we're going to hear those old love songs, and they'll take us back to days when we first fell in love, and we'll sing them with the intensity of our lovers who've been together through good times and bad times, lovers who trust one another to be here, lovers who believe in love and know that no matter how much things change, our love will remain. So don't be afraid. Get excited about this. Don't be afraid that you think your faith is being pushed away. Actually, it's being built on, and it's more mature than ever, because we're going up to the Rocky Mountain High together, and we're going to experience God like never before.
We make it what it is.
Others will feel welcomed.
I am welcoming.
It will do a great work.
If I work.
It will make generous gifts to many causes.
If I am a generous giver of my time, talents, and treasures.
It will be a sanctuary for social justice and for peace.
If I advocate for marginalized communities and practice peace in every setting of my life.
It will be a church that embraces all, that builds community, that grows faith, and transforms lives.
If I who make it what it is, practice these things.
Therefore, with the grace of God, we shall be a safe and inclusive church living God's radical message.
And I shall dedicate myself to being all the things I want my church to be.